ahead and go through everybody. Ladies first, Jed, your observations about the president and first lady, Hope Hicks, all testing positively for COVID. You've had COVID yourself. You know how this impacts people.
Yeah, well, obviously, first and foremost, want them all to be okay, hoping that they have mild symptoms, hoping that this goes away like a bad dream. What I learned from having it is that this affects everyone's body very differently. I was not on any medications prior. We know the president was taking some medication prior that may ease his symptoms a bit. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. But we want them to be okay. We want all the steps taken, obviously, to make sure that anyone that the president or the first lady or Hope Hicks came into contact with is tested. And I think politically, this is a moment where a lot of the strategy, we've been talking about the strategy of two campaigns. I think that, unfortunately, now we're going to have front and center a conversation about these rallies. Because remember, the President of the United States is thankfully, luckily enough to have a team of doctors around him who are going to make sure, hopefully, that he is okay. But that conversation will become, what about the people at these rallies? How is this managed? Is this a good idea? And obviously, for all events in the future, we want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure everyone around them is safe. And we want to make sure it's taken seriously. This virus can be a beast. It is not for everyone, but it can be, and it can have lingering symptoms that are odd for people. So I hope that is not the case for the first family. But you just never know. That's the bottom line. You just never know.
So, Pete, you just sat down with the president last week, and we watched your interview with him. What does that mean for you today?
I don't know. I mean, I feel fine. First of all, I echo exactly what Jedidah said, that we pray for the president, we pray for the first lady, Hope Hicks, and that's where the way everyone should be feeling this morning. I haven't felt these symptoms. I guess I'll get another test and confirm that I'm still negative. You get a test at the White House. I'd gotten one actually the day before for something unrelated. So I've been tested multiple times as well. I think from the president's perspective, this is a guy who's understood the risks from the beginning, just like a lot of Americans who've been watching cable news and watching the news understand the severity potentially of COVID-19. And his mentality has been, I'm an essential worker for the American people. I can't hide in a bunker. You've got truck drivers and nurses and police officers and construction workers who don't have a choice every day as to whether or not they're going to quarantine at home, whether they're going to do their job over a Zoom call. They have to be there in person. They have to be out there working in proximity of people. They understand that risk. And if they contract the virus, they'll deal with it, and they'll be responsible in the meantime. And I think the president demonstrated to people, as he will here, and we pray he's healthy, that as an essential worker, as someone who this nation needs in this critical moment, he can keep working, he will recover, he will test negative, he will move on, and the campaign will continue. Now, there's all the political ramifications that come from this. I actually think the same applies to rally goers. I feel differently. I think rally goers also knew the risks. They also have been told a lot of things that were true and untrue over 6 months. They made their own risk calculation as human beings who can make choices as free individuals to go to a rally, to wear a mask or not. There'll be conversations about that. I get it. But I like respecting people, and the president has respected people at every turn. In this case, we wish him the best. And I think he'll keep working, guys. I have no doubt, from wherever he is. He's got a pen and a phone. He'll keep going.
Yeah, Will, how important do you think it would be, not only for the markets, for the American people, to see him today? To have him maybe make an address to the country. Do you think that's something that would be important?
I do.
I think so. Go ahead, Will.
I do. If not see him, then hear from him. I want to echo again Pete and Jedidah's wishes. We send our best wishes and prayers to the president and the first lady. As we have these conversations, and I've been watching the three of you throughout the morning, there's going to be a temptation to draw big arching narratives about this, and I think we're going to have a choice. We can either look at this emotionally or we can look at this factually. We're going to have questions about, does this reveal some vulnerabilities either in the president's choices or in our nation? Or I believe we can look at the facts. We can understand, as Pete pointed out, every individual, including the president of the United States, makes their own risk assessment about what's necessary to their job and their own life. But more importantly, also highlight that even if you are in the age demographic that the president is, your recovery rate is north of 99.5%. I think it's important that the American people understand the risks, but also understand the facts. And this is an opportunity for everyone to see that, and hopefully, as you point out, Brian, hear that from the president.
Right. And Jed, the president's physician, Dr. Cooley, says that the president is doing well, and yet apparently AIDS at the White House will not say whether or not the president has any symptoms. So, you know, it's what does well mean regarding symptoms, and you understand that. But my question to you, though, is after the president has gotten to within 32 days of the election, and he has tried to put coronavirus, framing it like we're rounding the corner on this. Coronavirus is now, once again, the #1 issue in politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to your first point, yes, asymptomatic is very subjective, and I've been arguing that mild, the word mild is also subjective. We talk about the coronavirus oftentimes in terms of life and death, which is important, but you need to also understand that sometimes what sounds like mild, what doctors will say is mild, doesn't feel so mild to the individual. This will be a front and center issue, Steve, to your point, 100%. The fact that the two campaigns handle this very differently will be a front and center issue. And you can argue that every single rally goer has the right to make that decision for themselves. And I think there's some truth to that. You also have to know, though, people look to the president for leadership on these issues. Many people trust him on these issues. So if they feel that he has been in any way wavering on the issue of masks, or in any way minimizing the risk of these crowds, that will weigh into their decision, not to all, but to some. And that's something that the administration is going to have to factor in. Now, I think the primary story today, though, is that this is the leader of the free world. He is our president for all of us. We want him to be well. But if you're talking about political implications, I think that the Biden camp right now is strategically trying to figure out how to both wish the president well and make sure he's okay, but also highlight the discrepancy between the two campaigns and the reasons why the Biden campaign has decided to follow through with these virtual rallies and with these virtual events and not having the president front and center. That may be a talking point that's utilized today. That would not surprise me.
So, Pete, what do you make of the critics, of the awful things that are being written on social media? I told you so kind of comments, and then even worse than that, plans that for the worst for him.
Would you expect anything else at this point? The level of hatred
only
for this
left.
president that they have has dehumanized him. Cue the wild conspiracy theories at this point. Cue the rabbit trails. Cue the vitriol and the hatred and the speculation, none of which has anything to do with the president's best interest, the first lady, or the country.
The
And
mainstream
that's why
media
the best way forward for the president is
wound
to
them all up.
effectively say, I'm going through what a lot of other people have gone through. Yes, I have more doctors and access to more care than most, but I'm going to take the same precautions of others. I urge you to do the same. And I'm going to get back to work as soon as I have that negative test, which is hopefully very soon. In the meantime, I'm going to do the work that I can, because I actually think a lot of people who either had it or know someone who had it will relate to the reality that no one's immune. You can't put a bubble around yourself despite how many tests you may have. And so working through it, proving that as a 74-year-old you're going to have, as Will said, a 99% survival rate, is demonstrating that science and facts ultimately show we can go about our lives even amidst this, and the president can yet again demonstrate that.
And Will, we knew right away anyone could get it. I mean, the most famous actor in the world, Tom Hanks, and his wife got it coming back from Australia. But I thought this, a newsman, Brian Williams, says the president, who has been outwardly and publicly from the start, can fairly be called a COVID-19 denier, did his best publicly to diminish the threat. So there is somebody delivering the news with a lot of opinion and a lot of inaccuracy.
We're supposed to be objective.
I suspect that will not be the first, wasn't the first, and will not be the last. And look, everybody's going to want to draw their own political narrative off of this. They're going to look for confirmation bias. I would take us back to the very beginning. We don't want anyone to get COVID-19, much less the President of the United States. But the goal was never to accomplish a 0% transmission rate. It was an impossible goal if that was ever it, and it wasn't. That was never what anyone espoused as the goal. The goal was to balance the spread of this disease against the choices we have to make on a daily basis in this life, both business and personal. The fact that the president acquired or tested positive for COVID-19 is not proof of any particular political point. It is proof that, as Pete said, you can't control the spread of this disease. You can slow it, and we can control the mortality rate to the best we can, and science allows. But this is not proof, in my mind, of any particular political point. It's just proof that you cannot control a virus.
All right.
Exactly.
Will and Jed
Exactly.
and Pete, thank you very much. We're going to be watching you all weekend long.
Yes.
Y'all have a lot to talk about tomorrow. We'll see you then.
All right.